He traveled first to the outer market moons of Kasari, where whispers were traded more than goods, and information could be bought, if one knew the right hands to shake. His mother had once told him, "Truth hides in shadows, not in marble halls," and so to the shadows Scilen went. He posed as a messenger boy, sweeping hangars and delivering parcels, but his ears were always open. In one hangar, he overheard two dock agents laughing about Caldras's clever cover job. They mentioned names, routes, falsified signatures. He memorized it all. On his third night, while eating stale bread behind an old fuel depot, a hand landed on his shoulder. Scilen spun to see a woman, perhaps 30, wearing the dull green jacket of a former judicial clerk. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, held no fear. "You don't belong here," she said. "And you do?" She smirked. "Not anymore. I'm Lyrian. You're looking for the truth, aren't you?" He didn't answer, but the fire in his eyes was reply enough. "Then follow me." She led him to a forgotten chamber beneath the judicial towers of Kasari's southern ring. Within its dusty shelves lay years of unused data drives, raw court transactions, discarded evidence, and sealed documents. Lyrian explained she'd once been a scribe for the planetary court, until she uncovered too much about Caldras's dealings. "They silenced me," she said, tapping the faded scar behind her ear. "I've been hiding ever since. But your mother, they made a mistake going after her. Too many watched. Too many cared. If we worked together, we might still turn this around." In that dim chamber, over cups of burnt calf and cracked screens, the two began to build their case. Scilen gathered data from old trial logs, matching timestamps with location records from Talmari's relay tower. Lyrian decrypted sealed files showing orders signed not by Neria, but by a ghost identity long rumored to be one of Caldras's shadows. "This proves nothing to the High Court," Lyrian sighed one night, brushing her hair back. "They'll say we forged it. We need a relic, a sacred chip from the pre-Ascension era, something that overrides modern records." Scilen frowned. "Where would we even find that?" She looked up at him, eyes serious. "The ruins of Thera Prime." It was madness. Thera Prime had been abandoned for over 70 years after the planet's surface cracked in the Great Shift. But beneath its shattered Senate halls, ancient data cores were rumored to still glow, if one dared to look. "We leave at dawn," Scilen said. Thera Prime was as lifeless as history claimed. Entire cities slumped under clouds of ash and silence. The old Senate tower stood like a broken finger pointing skyward, half its upper levels crumbled to dust. Within its belly, they descended through collapsed marble corridors and rotting carpets, guided only by flickering lamps. After nearly a day of searching, they reached the archive vault. The door was sealed by a code known only to those who once held senatorial rank. "My father was one," Lyrian admitted quietly. "He died in the schism. But I still remember his code." She entered the sequence. The door hissed. Inside, amidst untouched relics and shelves of crystalline drives, they found what they needed, the verdict chip, a glowing silver disc marked with the seal of galactic law. It contained proof not just of Neria's innocence, but of systemic corruption stretching across 4 colonies. But the silence was broken. An explosion rocked the vault. Flames curled through the corridor. Caldras's mercenaries, alerted by informants, had followed them. "Go," Lyrian shouted. "Not without you. Take the chip." He grabbed her hand. Together, they ran through smoke and fire, leaping over debris, the chip clutched tightly to Scilen's chest. Behind them, the vault collapsed. As they emerged into the twilight of the ruined city, Lyrian stumbled. Scilen turned and caught her. "You're hurt." "Just a scratch," she said, then leaned forward and kissed him, breathless, fierce. "We're not done yet." Later, in a small shuttle stolen from the mercenaries, they plotted their next move. They would go to Judikara itself, the central world of the Galactic Court. During the annual peace conclave, all court officials and the Empress herself would be in attendance. If we show them this then, Lyrian said, her voice hoarse, they'll have to listen. They won't just listen, Cylon replied. They'll kneel. As the stars drifted outside their viewport and Lyrian rested her head on his shoulder, Cylon closed his eyes for the first time in days. Neria was still alive. And hope, however fragile, now had a name. The skies over Judicara were not like Talmari's twin suns. Here, the heavens stretched in tones of deep copper and violet, streaked with shimmering trails from passing diplomatic vessels. Ships shaped like wings, swords, and towers moved through invisible lanes, each one marked by banners of a dozen systems. This was the heart of the Galactic Union, the seat of power and the symbol of law. Cylon stared at it from the viewport of the stolen shuttle. Beside him, Lyrian adjusted the calibration of the cloaking module they had jury-rigged from salvage tech. We have to land within the diplomatic district, she murmured. Anything else will trigger defense grids. The conclave begins at dawn. We'll make it, Cylon said quietly, more a promise to himself than to her. We have to. When they landed, the city was alive with celebration. Banners floated between the columns of alabaster towers, and holographic flames danced above the walkways. Diplomats, noble families, and royal entourages moved with practiced grace through the plazas. Cylon's simple grey cloak did little to hide his fatigue, but no one looked twice at two strangers in a city filled with thousands. We need to reach the High Tribunal building, Lyrian said, pointing toward a spire that glowed gold even in twilight. It's where the final conclave speech is given. Only dignitaries are allowed inside. Then we become dignitaries, Cylon replied. Getting into the tribunal required more than forged passes. It required timing, deception, and no small amount of daring. Lyrian approached a minor delegation from the Outer Rim, envoys from a moon world called Narxa, all dressed in heavy green robes and speaking in clicks and vowels. She spoke their language, badly, but passably, and convinced them that she and Cylon were junior envoys from a recently admitted territory. Their confusion was the perfect cover. Within an hour, they were inside. Marble halls soared above them. The floor beneath their feet shimmered like glass, depicting the history of the Union in glowing mosaic. Guards flanked every entrance, armed with ceremonial staves and cloaked in crimson. Above it all, banners of justice, twin scales beneath a burning star, hung motionless in the artificial breeze. We do this at the Empress's address, Lyrian whispered. They won't be able to cut us off if we stand during her declaration. Cylon nodded, the weight of the relic chip hidden within the folds of his cloak. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with the gravity of what he was about to do. The Empress of the Union, Salidra, stood at the top of a curved platform. Her robe was deep violet, layered with woven threads of star metal. She did not speak at first, she only raised her hands, and silence spread like a wave. This cycle, we gather under peace, she began, but peace without truth is a coin with no weight. We have bound our systems in law, and so must ensure the law is not hollow. As she spoke, Cylon stepped forward. His voice cut through the hall like a blade. Then why was my mother sentenced without trial? Every eye turned to him. Gasps. Murmurs. Guards moved, but the Empress lifted her hand. What is this? She asked. I am Cylon Tal of Talmari, he said. And I have evidence that Governor Kaldra's falsified charges against my mother, Neria Tal. She was condemned to the prison Moon Serex without a hearing. I possess the original trial seal and the verdict chip overwritten by forged commands. He stepped forward and held up the glowing silver disc. Whispers erupted into noise. Kaldras himself, standing on the upper tier, went pale. Lies, he shouted. This is a disruption. A criminal act. Lyrian stood beside Cylon. I was a scribe of the Southern Court. I testify to the manipulation of data and the gagging of internal reports. The Empress stepped down. Present the chip, she commanded. Cylon handed it to a tribunal archivist, who placed it into a crystalline reader. Above the room, a projection bloomed, records of court logs, timestamps, cross-checks. Silence fell again, but this time it was sharp and accusing. Caldras began to shout, to deny, to blame unnamed assistants. But the weight of the evidence was too much. "I demand an emergency session," said a voice from the council tier. "Seconded," said another. Empress Salidra looked at Cylon, then at Caldras. "Take him," she said. Guards moved. Caldras was dragged from the chamber. Cylon closed his eyes. He had done it. But it was not over yet. Later, in a quiet room lined with pale wood and star-silver panels, the Empress sat across from Cylon and Lyrian. She looked tired, though her posture remained regal. "You understand that exposing this will ripple across the systems," she said. "Then let it ripple," Cylon said. "Truth must echo louder than lies." Lyrian nodded. "The Union cannot survive if justice becomes a mask." Salidra looked at them for a long moment. "I have ordered a retrial. Neria Tau will be brought from Cerex under guard. Her name will be cleared before the conclave ends." Cylon's voice cracked. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," the Empress said. "The court is not kind to those who shame its power. Many will resist this. You must be prepared." 3 days later, Neria arrived in a stasis pod flanked by 8 guards. She stepped onto the tribunal platform with the slow grace of someone who had forgotten how soft the ground could be. Cylon ran to her. She wrapped her arms around him, trembling, and for the first time, he wept. "I told you I'd bring you home," he whispered. "You never stopped believing," she replied. "That's why I'm here." The retrial lasted a full cycle. Every piece of evidence was brought forward, every voice heard. Lyrian's testimony proved key. Her old court clearance allowed cross-reference access to records long buried. Caldras, brought in under arrest, tried to deny his part in the scheme, but his own communications betrayed him. Cylon's logs from Talmari, the relay pings, and the hidden journal entries from Neria sealed the case. When the verdict was read, the words rang across the tribunal. "Innocent. All charges void. Reparations to be determined." The room exploded in sound. Some cried. Others sat in silence, absorbing the weight of what had just occurred. Neria turned to the Empress. "Thank you," she said simply. But Salidra shook her head. "Thank your son." That evening, as the stars bloomed over Judicara, Cylon and Lyrian stood on the balcony of their guest quarters. Below them, the city shimmered. "You did it," Lyrian said, her voice quiet. "We did it." She took his hand. "I've never believed in heroes." "Neither did I," he said. "But maybe that's what makes them real." They kissed as the stars watched. And far away, in a place once cloaked in silence, hope was now a sound heard across the universe. It began with silence. Not the silence of fear, but of aftermath. The kind that lingers after something monumental has shifted. When the High Tribunal dismissed for the day, and the final words of exoneration echoed through the spires of Judicara, the world didn't roar, it paused. Neria, newly freed, sat in a sunlit chamber of the palace annex, dressed in a simple woven gown of soft gray. Her fingers trembled as she traced the carvings in the wall. Cylon stood nearby, still wearing the travel-worn cloak from Talmari. The sun streamed through lattice windows, painting them both in threads of gold. "You haven't slept," Neria said, her voice soft. Cylon shrugged. "Neither have you." She turned to him fully, and for a moment, mother and son looked at each other not as survivors, but as kin who had walked through shadow and come out changed. "They'll come for you next," she said. "The ones who wanted me gone. You exposed them. I'm not afraid. You should be." Lyrian stepped into the room, her presence quiet but commanding. Her dark hair was still wet from the bathhouse steam, curling against her shoulders. She held a small object in her hand, a sigil shard. "You're both being watched," she said. "I caught a surveillance drone near the terrace this morning. Someone's worried about what we might do next." Cylon raised an eyebrow. "Good. Let them worry." Neria smiled faintly. "You're so much like your father." He'd have said the same. The days that followed were turbulent. While the courts declared the retrial resolved, political undercurrents surged like quiet storms. Factions formed, some calling Cylon a symbol of lawful defiance, others denouncing him as a destabilizer. "They need a narrative," Lyrian explained one evening, poring over data paths. "They can't just admit their system failed. So they'll choose what makes them feel in control." "And what's our narrative?" Cylon asked. She looked up. "We write our own." That choice began with action. Lyrian arranged a meeting with Chancellor Elder, an old ally of her father's and a respected figure in the Senate. They met in a vaulted greenhouse beneath one of Judicara's floating gardens. Elder was tall, stooped with age, but his eyes were sharp. "I watched the trial," he said, without preamble. "The Empress was wise to allow it. But don't mistake that for support. She plays a long game." "We don't want power," Cylon said. "Just truth. And maybe a little peace." Elder chuckled. "In this city, peace is the rarest coin." Lyrian placed a sealed crystal on the table. "Inside is every record we uncovered. It proves Caldras wasn't acting alone." Elder's expression shifted. "That's dangerous knowledge. Then we're putting it in the hands of someone who understands danger." He accepted the crystal and nodded. "I'll see that it reaches the right eyes. But be careful. Truth is heavy, and not everyone wishes to carry it." Cylon and Lyrian's bond deepened in the weeks that followed. No longer bound by mission alone, they began to share more than just whispers in the dark. Cylon told her of his childhood among the orchards of Talmari, how he used to race the wine down the eastern hills. She spoke of the years spent buried in court scrolls, watching justice become theater. On the fifth evening, she brought him to the Starbridge, a crystalline structure that arced across the judicial district's highest dome. Above them, the stars turned slowly, soft blues and warm whites. "My father brought me here once," she said. "Before he died. He said, never trust a system built without love." I didn't understand it then." Cylon turned to her. "And now?" "I think, I do." She reached out, touching his hand. "You didn't fight for glory. You fought for her. For family. Maybe that's what love really is." He pulled her close. The kiss they shared was slow, a sealing of wounds neither had spoken aloud. But peace did not last. One morning, a coded message arrived, encrypted in an old style used only by former court scribes. Lyrian cracked it in minutes. "They're moving against us," she said, eyes wide. "A rogue tribunal, funded by Caldras's allies, is trying to issue a retroactive charge of judicial interference. They want to erase everything." "They can't," Cylon said. "Not legally. But if they force a vote before the full Senate sees the data." Neria stepped forward. "Then we go public. We don't wait for approval." Cylon hesitated. "Broadcasting it makes us targets." Lyrian looked at him. "We've always been targets. Now we become the signal." With the help of Elder and a few hidden allies, they accessed the Great Beacon, a relic communication tower once used during the founding days of the Union. Its signal could not be blocked, not even by the Empress herself. As the beacon activated, Cylon stepped onto the platform. Lights circled him. Cameras bloomed open like petals. Every system in the Union received the stream. "This is Cylon Tal, son of Neria Tal of Talmari," he began. "I speak not as a revolutionary, but as a citizen. My mother was nearly lost to silence. Justice nearly became theater. And we've discovered those responsible still operate within this government. He shared everything, names, files, voice logs. He named the tribunal leaders planning the cover-up. This isn't a plea. This is a mirror, he finished. Look at it. Decide what you want to be. The broadcast shattered expectations. Protests erupted across systems. Tribunals were suspended. Inquiries launched. But with visibility came danger. One night, as they returned to their quarters, the lights flickered. Lyrian paused. Something's wrong, she said. A pulse shot from a shadow, energy, not projectile. Cylon pushed Lyrian aside and took the blast to his shoulder. He collapsed, unconscious. Lyrian dragged him into cover. Guards responded within minutes, but the assailant escaped. Cylon woke in a clinic, his shoulder bandaged, pain burning through every breath. You saved me, Lyrian whispered, brushing her fingers against his. You saved me first, he murmured. At Thera Prime. The attack galvanized public support. Attempts to brand Cylon as a traitor failed. He became something else entirely. A symbol. And symbols, once born, are hard to silence. Rumors spread faster than light. Across the Union, systems once silent stirred with the pulse of awakening. Holograms of Cylon's broadcast were replayed in domed market squares and dusty shipyards, in orbital temples and minor halls. His voice, calm but fierce, became more than a call, it was a reckoning. On Judicara, however, the storm brewed differently. Politicians scrambled to reposition. Those who had backed Caldras now cloaked themselves in neutrality. Some whispered of Cylon as a threat to order. Others called for his protection. Factions once hidden revealed teeth. In the palace annex, Cylon recovered slowly. His shoulder, burned from the energy blast, throbbed with every breath. Lyrian remained at his side, refusing to leave. They'll try again, she said. They won't stop. Neither will we, Cylon replied. Elder returned 3 days after the attack. His robes were stained with travel, and his face was etched with urgency. The inner circle convenes tomorrow, he said, pacing the chamber. They'll attempt to override the Empress's authority and close all tribunals related to the scandal. If they succeed, your case disappears into sealed archives. We need to stop them, Lyrian said. You need to confront them, Elder corrected. Directly. Publicly. It's the only way now. How? Cylon asked. Elder looked at Lyrian. The Judgment Hall. Lyrian froze. The hall hasn't been used in centuries. Which is why it's perfect. Tradition binds even the most corrupt. Any petition delivered within the Judgment Hall must be heard. The inner circle cannot refuse you if you stand there before the people. Then we'll take it back, Cylon said. The Judgment Hall was buried beneath Judicara's foundations, a relic of the early Union, carved into the bedrock and lined with luminous stone. Its doors were sealed, not electronically, but through ancestral code, 3 physical keys passed down through generations of Senate elders. We have one, Elder said, revealing a long rod carved with glyphs. What about the others? Cylon asked. 2 remain. One with Senatrix veil from Cyrenos. The other with the ecclesiarch of the First Star cult. Both of whom backed Caldras, Lyrian added. They won't just hand them over. Then we don't ask, Cylon said. We take them. Senatrix veil was old but cunning. She resided in a stilted spire overlooking the violet bay of Judicara's second moon. With help from Elder's allies, Cylon and Lyrian infiltrated the estate during an evening masquerade. Cloaked as visiting dignitaries, they slipped past guards, navigated gilded chambers, and found the Senatrix's private vault. Within it, amidst relics and trophies, the second key lay in a velvet-lined case. Lyrian disabled the alarm using an old courthouse override protocol. They escaped just as the security grid flickered back to life. One more, Lyrian said, breathless. The ecclesiarch of the First Star cult held sermons within a monolithic temple high in the Sky District. Known for his disdain of dissenters, he rarely left his sanctum. The key was said to be hidden in plain sight, within the altar itself. I used to believe in this faith, Lyrian whispered as they ascended the temple stairs. Until I saw what it became. What did it become? Silen asked. A way to excuse power. They entered under the guise of petitioners. The temple was filled with artificial starlight, projected constellations spinning across the domed ceiling. The ecclesiarch, a gaunt man in robes of flickering silver, delivered a sermon filled with veiled warnings about rebellion and heresy. As the worshippers bowed their heads, Silen and Lyrian moved to the altar. With precision and haste, Lyrian pressed a hidden rune beneath the offering plate. A small compartment opened, revealing the third key. They left before the sermon ended. The night before the reckoning, they gathered outside the sealed doors of the judgment hall. Elders stood beside them, along with a dozen loyal senators and hundreds of citizens who had come to witness history. Silen held the 3 keys in his palm. Is this really going to work? Lyrian took his hand. It already has. You brought them here. Now finish it. He stepped forward, inserted the keys one by one into the ancient slots. The ground trembled. Stone mechanisms groaned. With a heavy sigh, the doors of the hall opened. The interior of the judgment hall was vast, circular, and solemn. Hundreds of seats circled a raised dais. Beneath a domed ceiling etched with the Union's founding oaths, Silen walked to the center. Lights flickered on. The inner circle arrived in silence, each member guarded, suspicious. The Empress herself entered last, flanked by twin honor guards. This is irregular, snapped a high counselor. So is injustice, Silen replied. Empress Salidra raised a hand. By ancient right, the judgment hall recognizes any who stand in its center. Speak, Silen Tau. He turned to the crowd. You all saw the broadcast. You know what we uncovered. And still, you would silence it. But not here. Not today. He produced a final relic, a shard taken from the beacon's archive, bearing the signatures of more than 1 million citizens demanding transparency. I submit this as petition. And I demand the records remain open. Arguments flared. Voices rose. Then Lyrian stepped beside him. This is not chaos, she said. This is the voice of the people. Law is not armor for cowards. It is a mirror. Look at it. One by one, senators stood. Some objected. More nodded. Then, one by one, hands were raised in vote. When the count was done, the Empress stood. By will of the Union, the petition is granted. Records will remain open. Tribunal corruption shall be investigated. She looked at Silen. You have done what no one has dared in generations. But her eyes darkened slightly. Be warned. Some will not forgive it. Silen nodded. I didn't come for forgiveness. I came for truth. As the crowd erupted into murmurs, as the doors opened again and light poured into the ancient hall, Silen and Lyrian held hands at the center. They had stormed the judgment hall. And for once, the law listened. The days following the judgment were unlike anything the Union had seen in centuries. Across worlds, tribunals reopened. Former judges were placed under investigation. Entire branches of the Justice Corps were audited. Documents once sealed under emergency codes became public. In system after system, people stood taller, their voices louder. In the heart of Judikara, Silen Tau found himself becoming something he never wanted to be, a symbol not just of justice, but of hope. But it wasn't the kind of hope found in statues or banners. It was the fragile, flickering kind. The kind people protect with trembling hands. And not everyone welcomed it. They struck during the twilight hour, just before the sun crested Judicara's gold-glass towers. Cylon and Lyrian were in the courtyard garden of the palace annex, sharing tea in quiet. Nerea was upstairs, meeting with a panel of advocates who had invited her to speak on civil reform. The sound came first, not the crack of a weapon, but the sudden stillness of birds. Then, a shimmer in the air. Two figures stepped out from cloaked distortion, dressed in black armor that gleamed like obsidian. Down, Lyrian shouted, diving across the table to shield Cylon. A plasma bolt sizzled past his head, melting part of the stone bench. He rolled and pulled the shock blade from his belt, a gift from Elder, never used until now. The fight was brutal and fast. Lyrian used a short-range disruptor while Cylon moved to flank. These were not street thugs or loyalist holdouts. They were professionals. When the final one fell, Cylon was bruised and bleeding. Lyrian knelt beside him. "That wasn't a warning," she said. "That was an execution order. They're scared. We should be, too." Word spread fast. The Empress herself ordered an investigation, but the attackers had no markings, no DNA signatures in the Union system. "Ghosts," Elder said, when he visited them later. "Someone has hired mercenaries off-grid." "Why now?" Cylon asked. "Because they fear what comes next." What came next was unity. For the first time in a generation, representatives from all core and rim systems gathered not for ceremony, but to rewrite law. The Empress proposed a tribunal overhaul, and, surprisingly, invited Cylon, Nerea, and Lyrian to sit as public advisors. "You earned this," she said. "And I won't waste it." There was resistance. Some senators staged walkouts. Some tried to rally the military against what they called judicial interference. But the Union's people had already chosen. They flooded streets and starside forums. Miners on asteroids carried Cylon's words in etched comstones. Families on waterworlds lit blue lanterns in windows. Children on core planets wrote essays on truth in classrooms. Ships arriving at Judicara bore symbols of new hope, scales balanced on open hands. Still, amidst the storm of reform, Cylon remained the same. He walked with Nerea in the orchard groves planted on the palace rooftop. "You miss home," she said. "Every breath. Then let's bring it here." And so they did. Cylon, with Lyrian and Nerea, began a small initiative, orchards planted across Union worlds. Every tree had a name. Every grove a story. Truth, they said, needed roots. In time, the final hearing was scheduled, a conclave that would officially recognize the tribunal reforms and enshrine the new code of justice into Union Charter. On that day, the great plaza of Judicara overflowed. Not with protesters. Not with armies. But with citizens. Nerea stood at the Empress's side as she announced the reforms. Lyrian spoke second, reminding everyone of what Cylon had almost stolen. And then Cylon stepped forward. "I never meant to be here," he said. "I was just a son, trying to bring his mother home. But sometimes, a small act cracks the sky." He held up a crystal pendant, one he'd made from the broken chip that had once carried his mother's false verdict. "Let this remind us, not of what broke, but of what we built after." And across 1,000 worlds, people listened. Later that night, Cylon and Lyrian walked the Starbridge again. The stars were soft, the wind warm. "Do you think it's over?" she asked. "No," he said. "But I think we're beginning." She took his hand. "What now?" He looked at her, at the sky, at the city below where his voice had echoed through the ages. "Now," he said, "we live."